Good morning, afternoon, and evening, fellow corporeals. Time is of no importance here. Welcome to the sessions, a time of entertainment, a time of learning, a time of thrills. The time has come for us to put aside our creature comforts and embrace those feelings of great excitement and pleasure by passing through that base emotion, the emotion of fear. You can enter the sessions, but will you ever come back as yourself? Or will something sinister and menacing follow you out of these sessions? To keep the evil at bay, stalk the nerdporeal lifeform and slay that red subscribe button and the bell to follow and obsess over future videos, streams, and insightful commentary. Remember, it is the unknown, the unseen, and the unhinged that preys upon all of us in the darkness. But perhaps mankind will one day learn to supply its own light. Make yourselves comfortable, find a nice place to perch, and make sure you have a tasty beverage or perhaps some food, because what you are about to go through may change the very fabric of your reality. Make you question things that you would not normally question, and ponder if you ever will make it through the sessions, the serial horror sessions. The concept of replacement has been in human history since before we could even fathom. It is an idea that preys upon one of our base emotions, the emotion of fear. The fear of replacement has come in multiple forms, whether it be something like losing your job, getting a divorce, or in war the concept of a land or your home being invaded and the original inhabitants killed off and replaced by the invaders. It has happened cyclically in human history, and that fear has never left us and is still embroiled in our DNA. What if there is a new kind of invader? An invader that is not only not human, but its life not as we know it from the wonderful words of Mr. Spock in Star Trek. In an age where the Cold War still rages on, with many Western policies fearing the infiltration of people supporting communist, socialist ideology, and many other perceived subversions, would it open the door for an unnoticed invasion of pod-like aliens from outer space landing in the Bay Area? Well, Philip Kaufman has provided that answer in the tense, paranoid, and insidious 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The 1978 invasion of the Body Snatchers begins in outer space as we witness gelatinous life forms leaving their dying planet and traveling to Earth, landing and adapting to the flora in the form of beautiful pink flowers in the Bay Area in the United States. We meet our players, San Francisco Health Inspector Matthew Bennell, played by Donald Sutherland, and his colleague Elizabeth Driscoll, a lab scientist in the health department. The story truly begins when Elizabeth brings a pink flower home to her boyfriend Jeffrey, and notices the following morning that he has been acting differently, acting like he doesn't know her, doesn't express any emotions, barely blinks, and goes out at night without a word. She tells Matthew this over dinner, and he suggests they go talk to famous psychiatrist David Kibner, played by the legend Leonard Nimoy. When they are driving on their way to see Kibner, they run into the guy from the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, who warns our characters saying, "They're coming!" and ultimately gets killed by another car off-screen, with spectators coldly looking at his corpse. They go to Kibner's book signing, with Kibner himself telling Elizabeth that she is just telling herself these odd things about her boyfriend so that she can end the relationship. Matthew drops Elizabeth off at her home and walks her in. A potted flower from another world was left as an apology gift by Jeffrey, only to find him creepily listening in on their conversation as he is waiting for something in particular. We meet Matthew's friend Jack, played by Jeff Goldblum, at Kibner's party, and later his wife Nancy, played by Veronica Cartwright, who owns a mud bath house serving various clientele. Nancy finds a body in one of their stalls that resembles Jack, but nude and covered with tendrils, and she gives a scream that was good enough for her audition in her next film, which turns out to be Alien. Check out my review if you haven't. Matthew drops by and sees this body for himself and senses danger to Elizabeth and decides to warn her. Unable to call her, Matthew immediately leaves, going back to Elizabeth, since Jeffrey screened his call the old-fashioned way, by leaving the phone off the hook. With Matthew gone, we find out that the body resembles a duplicate of Jack, covered in fibers, indicating it's a newborn but fully grown. The duplicate's eyes open as Jack falls asleep, but as he wakes up, the duplicate's eyes close, indicating it gets stronger as the host gets weaker, especially during sleep. Kibner shows up, but they find that the duplicate body has vanished with the window opened. Matthew arrives at Elizabeth's and sneaks in the back and goes up the stairs to find her in bed, but a not fully formed duplicate of her is also on the floor in the same room, covered in the similar fibers to Jack. He manages to evade Jeffrey as Jeffrey comes in to check on her, and he manages to carry her and spare her out of the house and takes her back to his place. Kibner, in the meantime, doesn't believe Jack's story about a duplicate being there and thinks they are pulling a practical joke. Matthew comes back and tells them about Elizabeth. Therefore, he and Kibner go back to Elizabeth's place, but this time with the police. They go into the bedroom, but they find the body gone, and the police and Jeffrey accuse Matthew of kidnapping Elizabeth. Kibner is skeptical later and tells Matthew he believes him and offers to use his contacts, including the mayor, to accept a telephone call from him to ask for support, but we soon find out David is actually one of them. Bennell tries to contact a series of officials, but they treat his claims of duplicate bodies with extreme skepticism and refuse to help him. We find out that the parasitic pink flowers that are growing everywhere are perhaps from outer space, and notice that they have been in the vicinity of the duplicate bodies. Therefore, suspecting a connection, Elizabeth takes a sample to the health department to have it analyzed. We see people change, lose their paranoia of their spouses. Does this mean they were duplicated already? That night, Matthew, Elizabeth, Jack, and Nancy stay at Matthew's, but as they are sleeping, we see pods emerging from the flowers outside. There are alien duplicates gestating inside the pods as they are sleeping. Once the duplication process is complete, the original host dies, being effectively replaced by the pod person. Matthew kills his duplicate and attempts to phone the police, but it seems they have already been infiltrated. Matthew and the others escape as they are being pursued by the pod aliens, and when they find you, they give off a high-pitched shriek, alerting the others, making you wonder if reeing is connected to all this. Matthew and Elizabeth, after a long pursuit, take refuge in the health department and take speed to stay awake. They are captured by David and Jack, who himself is a duplicate. David, being the alien leader of sorts, reveals they came from a dying world and have chosen Earth to settle and to survive by stealing human bodies. Matthew is able to turn the tables on his captors, killing Jack's duplicate and locking David in the freezer. They flee again and reunite with Nancy, who has managed to blend in with the aliens by hiding her emotions. Matthew and Elizabeth split from Nancy again when Elizabeth sees a mutant dog and screams, ensuing another chase. They escape by jumping onto and boarding a moving truck, heading to Pier 70, where more pods are being cultivated and prepped for transport to other cities. They arrive, with Matthew scouting the area, finding a means of escape aboard ship, but this ship is transporting pods overseas as well. Matthew returns to Elizabeth, finds her asleep, and with the pod duplicate process complete, her time as a useful host has come to an end, and she disintegrates in his arms. Her duplicate appears and tries to woo him to the dark side by joining them in all their pod-related glory and perks. He flees from her as she delivers a high-pitched shriek with another chase ensuing. Matthew goes into the pier and breaks into the warehouse, where pods are being continually cultivated, and he manages to burn the place down, destroying several hundred pods, with the workers attacking him and pursuing him to the point where he hides under the pier. Will he fall asleep eventually? The next day, we see Matthew walking back into the city. It is a quiet, unremarkable morning. He resumes his job at the health department, and Elizabeth is already there. We see workers, each carrying pods, doing their collective part to spread throughout the earth, and young school children are being escorted for duplication. Nobody's talking and showing very little emotion at the department. When the day ends, the people walk in unison, as if being controlled by something. Matthew walks by City Hall, and we see Nancy walk up to him and try to start a quiet conversation. To the viewer's horror, as well as Nancy's, Matthew starts to shriek at her with her screaming in the process, telling the viewer that Matthew, our main protagonist of this film, was duplicated, and it scrolls to the end credits in a very noticeable and very unsettling silence. With pod people only living 5 years, does this spell the end of the human race? Are there any humans left to resist this, or is there perhaps some hope that can come out of this? This film does not answer that question, but I prefer to believe that despite the insidiousness and horror occurring, we can, in fact, deliver ourselves out of any situation. Body Snatchers was originally inspired by the rise and spread of communism and the control that the Soviet Union, the CCP, North Korea, etc. had over its people, turning them into mindless followers who are merely existing and not truly living. With the Jonestown Massacre happening a month before this film's release, it is great timing that a movie with this cautionary messaging could come out, warning others of being mindless followers and not paying attention to the people around you and whether or not you can be replaced, whether physically or mentally. This film does a great job, like John Carpenter's Halloween, of taking time to set up the mood and atmosphere, and an especially creepy one at that, from the claustrophobic, low-angle cinematography in motion, with a creepy score and creepy sound effects by Ben Burtt himself, using pig squeals among other sounds to create the pod person shriek. There was music contributions from Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead, and that famous bagpipe rendition of the song Amazing Grace, which will be heard again in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. The sense of paranoia was a constant in this film and would be repeated in John Carpenter's The Thing, a future Serial Horror Sessions episode. A movie that I myself found unsettling, 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers is an underrated film and a great addition to anyone's horror movie views for the Halloween season, a worthy addition to the Serial Horror Session. Don't let yourself get replaced, and stay vigilant, because you never know where a pod person could turn up, being a stranger you walk past, to a co-worker or acquaintance, perhaps a good friend, or even perhaps your family. Perhaps they are already here, and you may be next. You may be next. On the next episode of Serial Horror Sessions. Let's go back in time to 1960 Phoenix, Arizona. Can a woman so desperate to marry the man she loves go as far to steal $40,000 to clear his debts? What implications does stealing the money have on her psyche? Can she find respite and answers at a motel off the highway? Is a boy's best friend his mother? Even more so, is it a good idea to take a shower at night? All these questions and more on the third episode of Serial Horror Sessions, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. If you like this, subscribe, hit the bell, and follow me on social media. I have a merch store link in the description to fill that nerdporeal merch void in your soul. Remember, many things can happen this Halloween season, so stay vigilant, and most importantly, let the wings of nerdporeals carry you to optimism during this scary season.